Hey, welcome back to another Just 5 Mins. Yet another one. What is it? Is this episode 148 or something? I can't remember. Have I really been rambling along all that time? Yep, I think so. I think I have. So, anyway, crikey, do you know, I always think, surely that's it. We've had the AI sort of peak and everybody's got AI and everybody, you know, but it still just keeps moving on, doesn't it? It's mad. I know, and there's a lot of people saying, are we going a little bit too crazy with it? And of course we are. We're humans, you know, we always do that. Yeah, let's split the atom. What could possibly go wrong? I'm not saying that's a bad thing, by the way, or I'm just neutral on that. You know, I'm just saying, you know, human nature, unfortunately, sometimes can be a bit of a devil, can't it? But anyway, but yeah, what a crazy time. I know as of the time of this recording, there's I mean, everybody's using AI and amazing stuff, really. It's really democratizing what you can actually do, whether it's video generation, image generation, code generation. You know, it's having the right frame of mind and not, you know, trusting it. And talking about that, the whole Claude bot, you know, Malt bot, and then OpenClaw or whatever it's called, you know, where there was this massive hype, and apparently it's the largest growing GitHub project or number of stars or something ever, apparently, so I've been told. But you know, and then everybody was just going out and I don't know why they were buying just Mac Minis. I mean, you can run it on sort of any hardware, but I think the guy who created it, or the hype train, sort of said, you know, everybody go buy a Mac Mini, you can leave it on and it'll do all this. Until then it went really seriously wrong for a lot of people. And the problem being, of course, is that, you know, the agents, you can really let them loose. And people were given their credit cards to the agents, all full access to their root access to the machine, to their logins to Amazon, to wherever, code, or goodness knows what. And I think they call it YOLO mode. You know, you only live once, basically. And yeah, but you know, underneath it, I had a look, and I think it's quite a fascinating project, and it is actually quite clever once you get past the hype. And if you're like any normal human being and being sensible with this stuff, I've built some agents in NA10 actually with Telegram support, and you know, loads of people have been doing this. It's nothing special or clever, but you know, where you can actually get the agents to call you as a phone call, like been doing some research, and you get a phone call or you get a Telegram or WhatsApp or whatever you want to use. So I've been building a few of those, and some of them are actually quite useful. But like everything, you know, you just got to have a relatively small dose of common sense, you know. So, but anyway, it's a crazy time with all of that. But as of the time of this recording, I think Anthropic have released Claude Code, is it 4.6? And OpenAI's Codex is 5.3 now. But there we go. I just wanted to have a word about that. There's Claude Code, you know, undoubtedly is amazing, and I can understand why everybody's using it. And I've not signed up to the Pro plan. I've got to rationalize. That's the problem, isn't it? We're all spending so much money on subscriptions. I've got an OpenAI subscription, which I think I might need to rationalize anyway. I only have the Claude basic plan, but interestingly, and that's what I was going to say, I've got GitHub Copilot plan. Okay, now what is it? I think it's £18 or dollars for Claude Pro or whatever, $20 for OpenAI. But interestingly, GitHub Copilot is $10 basically, but you get access to all of those models. Now, okay, there are limits, and quite rightly, you pay for what you get. You know, there is no free lunch, is there? But interestingly, for most of the coding stuff, I did go a bit crazy the other month on my GitHub Copilot plan, and I put it on Opus 4.5 because you can select all the different models. You've got Grok models, you've got OpenAI models, Anthropic models. So it's an interesting thing. You can save a bit of money and actually try out a lot of those models for a lot less than buying all of those subscriptions. You know, I'm not trying to push GitHub Copilot. I'm just saying it's there, you know. So for $10 a month, you know. Anyway, the idea being that I did try it on Opus 4.5 at the time, and it did some amazing stuff in VS Code. I forgot what I was even doing now. I think I was doing some .NET stuff, serverless functions and things like that. And it did go really well. But my goodness, it chomped through those tokens rather quickly. And before I knew it, you know, the premium models like Opus 4.5, they chewed up the tokens really quickly. But anyway, I found that about the 20th of the month, I'd run out of all my credits, and it went back to GPT 4.5 or something, or I don't know, one of the smaller models. So yeah, and the funny thing is, you can use different models for different things. So if you're doing like the planning stage, and things of that nature, maybe you want to use Opus or things like that, or Codex. But when you're doing some other stuff, you can actually drop down to the smaller models to save your tokens. But anyway, it's an interesting thing. But yeah, GitHub Copilot does give you access to all of those models. But interesting, like I say, I know Claude Code. I know people who use Claude Code and are really quite impressed with what you can do. So there's no doubt about that. And I am going to really sort of properly give it a test drive after all these months and a year or so since it's been out and all the rest of it. But I have to say, because I've still got the OpenAI Pro plan, I've got Codex 5.2, well, it's 5.3 now, just at the time of this recording. But I've got it all in VS Code. Now, when I say VS Code, I've got the models in GitHub Copilot, but obviously Anthropic and OpenAI have got their own extensions for VS Code. So you literally can have well, actually, I've got Gemini as well in there. But anyway, I've got 4 different chats available. So you don't have to go into the Copilot one per se. You can actually go to the native extension for Claude Code, or in my case, the Codex 5.2 Max. Now, funny enough, I'm going to compare this with Claude Code in the next week or two, but the Codex 5.2, and I'm sure 5.3 is going to be even better. I was really, really blown away with it. The planning stage, essentially what it actually built. So I've built a few example. I hesitate to call them SaaS products, but there's one that's a quotation app. Where you can, as a user, you can actually look at quotations with nice images and a bit of background music. But also as an owner, you can actually upload your own images and quotations. And it's basically a PWA mobile app. So it's a progressive web app. Crikey, that sounds so old now. But anyway, it's a mobile web app that's optimized for the mobile world, but it can run. You basically have the option. You can have an icon on Android or iPhone or whatever. It's ultimately still a mobile web app, but it gives you access to other things like background workers and local storage and a few other things. Like I say, you can make it look like a mobile app without having to go through the pain and agony of the Play Store, the iStore, the App Store rather, which I've done a few years ago now, and it has got easier, but it's still quite a bit of work to get your apps on those Play Stores and App Stores. So anyway, I built that with Codex, and I built it with, and again, it's all flavors of ice cream. If you don't like Microsoft, then try a different platform. There's loads of them out there to choose from. Plenty of flavors. But this was on Azure, and it's Azure Serverless Functions, because that, for me, was the easiest way to deploy a backend API. I'm using, you can have up to 10 of these, by the way, a free Azure SQL database. And when I say free, it really is free. And by the way, the serverless functions, to all intents and purposes, is free. You get, I don't know, it's something like 1 million requests a month or something. So unless you actually do start to really scale, it's virtually free. And funny enough, the front end, the mobile web app is on Azure Static Apps. And again, you get, I can't remember how many you get of those free, maybe 10 or something, but there's a free plan. And the free plan has SSL built in. You can map your own domain to that free Azure Static Web App. And of course, because it's, even though it's a PWA, a progressive web app, it's still technically just a web app that's talking to the back-end serverless function, which in turn is talking to a SQL database. And by the way, the Azure serverless functions got full user authentication using JWT, JSON Web Token authentication, OAuth sort of flow. And all of that was built with Codex. And because I had the pro plan of Codex, I didn't come close to using up any of my credits. But as I say, the $10 a month GitHub Copilot one has got Codex and Opus and all the rest of it in there as well. So if you are just dabbling around a little bit, it's obviously a cheaper option. And you get to play with all of them. And again, you've got anti-gravity from Google with Gemini, and it's a VS Code fork. I think it's all brilliant. I'm not against any of them, but I just like, at the moment for me, I like the vanilla VS Code. I've got certain extensions that just work with me, and in fact, it's really weird because for up until recently, up until maybe a month or two ago, I absolutely still use Visual Studio, by the way, 2026. But a couple of months ago, I did actually switch to VS Code to build some, to work with what I would have done is work in Visual Studio. So VS Code is actually doing all of that, because there's all the .NET integration in VS Code, the C#, all that sort of stuff. And again, you get access to maybe a lot more of the functionality that Visual Studio proper is just a little bit slower to implement those things. And of course, you can do this in JetBrains Rider, which there's a free version of that as well. And you can use their AI, but you can also use, I think now, GitHub Copilot and these other extensions. So this was meant to be 5 minutes, wasn't it? It's turned out to be a weekend ramble, but there we go, up to 14 minutes. But I'm just amazed by the amount of stuff that you can actually do. So I think if you want to try out, I think GitHub Copilot, again, I'm not marketing it, by the way, when I keep saying it, but if you want to try out all of those different models, not to mention the AI toolkit, which is incredible, you really should look at that. It's an extension for VS Code. I'll put some links below, and I've got a couple of videos planned. I've been a bit slack on the YouTube video side of things. I do have to get back into a bit of consistency, but I've got a few videos coming up showing those things. And actually, one of the other things that I wanted to go into, which I won't go into now, it's way too long a podcast already, is something called Tracer, Traycer, because even though in all of the even in Visual Studio, but certainly VS Code, you've got what am I trying to say? You've got all the planning stuff that you can do, and you've got Agents MD. And by the way, I haven't even touched on skills. I'm going to have to do that as a separate one as well, where you can have skills that Anthropic came up with, but they're compatible with GitHub Copilot, Gemini, again, Codex, and all the usual things. And the way that you can structure these skills to be progressively loaded, and there's the key bit, it's the progressive loading of these skills. And the skills can actually talk to MCPs as well, by the way, MCP servers. But the progressive nature is the key bit. So it doesn't bombard your context window with so much information. But that's another topic for another day. And skills can actually have default scripts, images, and bits of code snippets that you say I want to use all the time. But I'm trying to pack too much in one session at the moment. Anyway, I'll come back to that. But yeah, there's some amazing, and that's the thing, that's the last little takeaway from this, is that even if you're not a full coder, I am going to get my backside in gear and finally get a course put together. Everybody's doing a course, isn't it? A course. My kingdom for a course. But anyway, everybody's doing it. And yes, I'm probably going to be another one of those ones. You can laugh, you can cry, you can turn off. It doesn't matter. But I'm convinced that I can, even if you're not a full coder, that you can build an app. And like I've mentioned, certainly on Azure, and like I said, you can have different flavors of ice cream, but on Azure, you can host all of that code generation for free. So when I mentioned like Azure Serverless Functions, Azure SQL Database, the front end, really you can host all of that for free. So unlike things like Lovable and Riplet and a few other things like that, which I know are very, very good, I'm not knocking them, but you don't have to pay a monthly cost for. So I've really got to get that up and running, because I'm quite adamant that I can actually get people to build these apps, whatever they are. And then ultimately, the point being is that, yeah, you really want to understand what it's doing, these apps, and how the code looks. But it gets you that first step, doesn't it, to build something, to get excited about what you're building. And then, of course, you can actually delve into it and say, well, you can even use AI, of course, and say, well, what does this bit of code do? What does that function do? How does that interact with that? So anyway, I'll keep you posted on that. I talked about this mid last year, I think it was, and I never got around to it. So proof is in the pudding. I'll have to put my money where my mouth is, as they say. But yeah, this has been a very long 5 minutes. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Hope you're having a good day, a good week, wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next one.